You have put so much thought and work into this, Nathan. I love it.
Thank you.
A lot of things, material that needs to be shared with after watching the report from where we stand in education, we need to do some pretty radical things to turn things around for what we're doing, presenting to our kids, giving to our kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are recording right now, Sue. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start up. Our guest today is Dr. Nathan Belcher, and I am not sure which episode this is, but I am Sandy Dixon, and we've got Sue McGuire on board. She is our hostess, and she's got some issues with her sound on her end, so we're going to go ahead and go forward. And I'm really excited to hear what Nathan has to share with us today. We start out with a thought for the day, and our thought for the day is: the world is changed by your example, not your opinion. We learn by doing, correct, Nathan? That's what you're going to share
Yes,
with
ma'am.
us today. So, Nathan, give us your history. Tell us something about yourself, and we'll go
Sure. Thanks
forward.
for having me on. Really proud to be here and really thankful for the opportunity. So, yeah, so I am an educator. I've been an educator for about 15 years at this point. And just a short background, grew up in Southwest Virginia, and I went to the College of William and Mary, both for undergrad and a master's in education, and really came into the teaching profession. Both my parents are educators, so really happy to follow in their footsteps. It's a wonderful life. Obviously has its challenges, but it's so rewarding when you can see students grow and learn and become really great versions of themselves. So then after I finished that, I taught
Right.
1 year in Virginia, and then I moved to the Charleston, South Carolina area, taught at Wando High School for a while, met my beautiful wife there. And then during that time also, I did my doctoral work at the University of South Carolina. And my dissertation was actually on a way to use a type of teaching science called modeling instruction and to put that into AP Physics C, both mechanics and electricity and magnetism. And so was really happy to do that work. It was a lot of work, but it was really great for my professional growth. And it was an action research project, which was amazing. And so during that time, I got really, really interested in how people actually learn. And so the part of the reason for that is the guy who, or one of the main people who came up with modeling instruction, also Dr. David Hestenes, formerly at Arizona State University. Basically, he also came up with an idea called the modeling theory for cognition, which essentially is an idea that all humans learn through models, and all humans create models as they learn. And so kind of going off of that idea and other ideas around learning, really tried to start just putting learning into my own teaching. It was also, it was very funny in terms of, or, very interesting in terms of trying to figure out, all right, how does the way that I'm doing things actually align with principles of learning? Started doing also a ton of extra reading, other reading, and really, really got focused on, again, am I learning curriculum development, curriculum design, instructional practices, and assessment? Am I aligning that with the way that humans actually learn? And if not, okay, how am I going to change it? And if so, how can I make it better?
Right.
Right. And so then I guess fast forward a little bit, my wife and I decided to do an overseas adventure. So we went and actually taught in Singapore for 6 years and had some wonderful colleagues, continued to refine my practice and bounce ideas off of people. Presented on this work for a couple of different conferences in Southeast Asia. And again, just really tried to come up with ideas and try to figure out, what are ways that I can explain this. I think that something that drives me is learning well eventually gets to wisdom. And I think that wisdom is something that's really important. Again, I'm nearing 40 years old. And so I think as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate the value of wisdom more and more. And so to try to help
Right.
students, not only with, learning the content or whatever we're teaching, knowledge and skills in whatever course, also trying to have them understand various things about themselves. And I think understanding the learning process, again, whether you're a student, whether you're an athlete, lifelong learner, it doesn't matter what we're learning, being able to understand the learning process, I think is going to help everyone just be better faster, right? And so from there,
Right.
so I started a company on this actually called the Learning Engine, and I just have a real passion around the helping people understand the learning process. And so again, I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to share some ideas and share some thoughts around that. And so again, thanks for having me on.
Do you have a slide that you
Sure,
want
yeah,
to show
we
us,
will
Nathan?
share a screen. So hopefully this will pop up. So the hopefully we will come up. I think it's loading.
One of the things that you and I were talking about, Nathan, before we started recording was the fact that my background is early childhood education, and our premise was that children learn best when all their senses are involved and there's hands-on learning, and that's exactly what you're referring to. And I don't think we grow out of that need. I think it even becomes stronger as our synapses get pruned in our brain. You know, little kids can learn a language at 2 years of age that at 12 or 14 it becomes more difficult. And yeah, I love what you have to share with us.
There we go.
And I remember going back to college after being out for 10 years and having to relearn everything and start over again. And you're talking
Right.
about that. So go ahead.
Yeah, so
Got there.
basically this was an image that I came up with as just a way to describe the learning process. And so I'm kind of using the idea of model that can, is explanatory and predictive. So sort of the scientific version of what the word model means. And so again, there were, with gratitude towards various people in terms of sources, but there's some groups in the United Kingdom that are doing a lot of really great work with educators and cognitive scientists and learning scientists and all of those. And so I kind of started with one of their models, and then just had a thought of, hey, I want to try to make my own and kind of come up with a way that I can use to explain this. So so this is basically a input processing output model for learning, which again, I know there's a few different ways that you can try to describe the learning process. That's kind of the simplest one, I think, for me, that seems to check all the boxes in terms of being a legitimate way to describe things. And so that's kind of where I base this on. And so the input into a human, obviously the bottom left, my little stick figure there, is sensing and focusing. And so basically we have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of things coming into to our senses, and then our brain basically picks what to focus on. And so another also interesting input for this is that, and I will draw a second version of this at some point relatively soon, is that the red arrow should also have a feedback loop. So there should be an arrow for the red, which is the output, but we do get feedback from our input. So again, for example, right now we're obviously recording this, and so I'm monitoring my own way that I'm describing and talking about things. I'm monitoring that as I'm also speaking to you. So it's a learning loop. It's a looped process. And so there's multiple things coming in.
Right.
And then basically, obviously, we have tons of things happening in our brain. And so there are a couple of main ideas. So working memory is sort of the processing center of your brain. The typical way to say it is it can hold 4 to 7 chunks of information. Chunks is a deliberately vague word, and we can talk about more what that means in a little while. But basically, you have something that's doing some processing in your brain, and that's happening all around your brain. It's very distributed. It's not just like one specific spot, even though I drew it as a box. And then basically, the things that are happening in your brain come from ideas around schema, which John Piaget and others associated with him. But then we build those into conceptual models, and so. Again, going back to Dr. Hestenes with the modeling theory of cognition, basically we build conceptual models. Conceptual models are ideas that explain things, that predict things. They can be knowledge, they can be skills, they can be combinations of models and skills, obviously, or knowledge and skills. Obviously, if you're playing a sport or doing an instrument or anything that requires physical activity, those are all things that are things that become in conceptual models. So the blue words and the purple words, so creating and linking conceptual models, retrieving and modifying conceptual models. And so then basically, if we're trying to store knowledge and skills in our long-term memory, basically from our working memory, it gets sort of popped into our working memory. Those are, again, just biological and chemical connections in our brains. They really happen from the brain cell level, our neurons level. And so, one of the fun parts about this as well is, you have the biology and chemistry that's happening in your physical brain, and then there's just this awesome abstract layer, and so you have to talk about it in multiple ways. And so it's fun to be able to talk a little bit about our brain physiology, but then also the abstract things that make us human in terms of the way that we can actually be able
Right.
to have even this discussion. And so then for long-term
Right.
memory, if we're going
Right.
to use the things, the knowledge and skills, the sets of knowledge and skills in our conceptual models, those get brought, and the way that I've drawn it, they get brought down into our working memory. And then as we output through what I call purposeful application, which is practicing and performing, then that's how we actually have an output. That's how we use our knowledge and skills, and we have to use it. There is no way to understand what any person knows without them actually trying to use the sets of knowledge and skills. And so, again, there's the interesting one around like theoreticians. It's the pie in the sky and they don't try anything. It's like, well, fair point, but truly, in order to actually understand, we got to combine the realistic things from the real world and interactions with people and everything else. And we have to combine that with
Right.
theory. And then we have to update what's going on. We have to update the theory or the knowledge and skills in the theory to actually figure out what do we need to do. And then, of course, the gray
Yeah.
forgetting. There's a couple that you can forget long-term memory. So basically, if you don't use some knowledge and skills for a while, the brain cells kind of degrade a bit. And then, of course, in your working memory, if you get distracted or anything happens to your working memory, you can also forget there. So that's the short version of it. And I hope that was clear.
Yes, a lot of good information. A lot of good information. Um, so the process that you went through, you've done a lot of research, a lot of education on this. What was the thing that made you? What was the one thing that helped you turn that corner to say, this is where I want to go with my thesis. This is what I feel is going to make a difference in the field of education.
Yeah, I think that, again, just really trying to help students be the best version of themselves. And, again, you want to see them succeed, right? Our success comes from the success of students. I think that even if I think that I delivered, the world's greatest lecture or, came up with the world's best curriculum design, if students didn't have a way to understand the physics that I was talking about, then I don't think it's worth it. And so I think that as I got into the process of doing the action research, and really being reflective around my practice, I think that was something that was built into the program at William & Mary and the one also at Carolina. And then I know that that's a thing that we try to do all the time, is reflect on what we're doing. And so I think as I continue to get into that, really trying to get into what's the fundamental thing that is a keystone or a linchpin or whatever analogy, metaphor you want to use for that. I think what's the most important thing. And so I think that the ability to understand how to learn, I think, is such a massive and transferable skill that people can use it for literally once they learn it, they can use it for the rest of their life. And so, as I got into it, I used it in my own doctoral work. I used it in my hobbies. I play golf. Golf's a very hard game. And so try to use it in that, try to use it in my parenting and really just,
Right.
all of the things to say like, okay, like, I know how learning works. Like, is what I'm doing actually helping me or not? And again, I think you can, again, getting back to wisdom, I think learning efficiently, learning effectively, and again, really just trying to become the best human that you can, I think is the thing that drives me every day.
Well, one of the things, the framework that we have talked about a lot in our series is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you mentioned something about that when we were talking before we started recording, the fact that there's got to be essential things in place for people to be ready to go beyond just safety and basic physical needs. And so you are very aware of that. I'm curious as far as an example of a lecture. So I'm betting that you don't just end up being a talking head. I bet you are engaging your students all the way through your class time. Can you give us an example of what that would look like?
Yeah, sure. So I guess full disclosure as well, I do have, or I have gone to sort of a flipped classroom model more recent years. And so, but even in those, if I'm talking for 10, 15, 20 minutes, I try to crack myself up. I try to, make jokes that the students will enjoy. And it's funny to hear the way that they, engage with those. And so usually I would actually, or in the past, I've done those on an iPad or just a tablet. And basically, I have the notes out, but then I'm circling stuff and I'm highlighting and I'm underlining. And actually at one point, a student said, like, if I looked at your notes after, because then I would publish a PDF of whatever I had done. She was like, I would not have any idea what you were talking about if I had, like, because there's so many scribbles and underlines and circles. And she's like, if I didn't watch the video, it's just like the notes are like, whoa, what happened? So it's interesting so you have sort of that idea of trying to be engaging and all of that on camera, or again, for that, it was just actually a mic. It was just using the microphone recording, and they could only see what was on the tablet screen. But yeah, if I'm trying to give some sort of live lecture, it's very much not, it's not talking for more than, I don't even 5 minutes, but then we're trying to ask questions, right? We're trying to pause, think, pair, share is such a classic but crucial way to, engage students. We were fortunate enough at various times to have like whiteboard tables where students actually sat. So it was like, hey, grab a marker. All right, you got 1 minute, diagram out, or in some sort of fashion, write down what you think I just said. And then you can walk around the room. And so you have little mini whiteboards, or even just on paper, making sure that you're stopping in a couple of different minutes. And yeah, to get to the word, obviously metacognition is a huge word. And yeah, really, so being able to think about your thinking. But then, again, I think my model helps with giving a framework for both adults and students, or really anybody, but in terms of a school thing, right? So if you have administrators, if we use, hey, again, like, is my model for learning perfect? No, it's not. Every model has something it has to leave out in order to not make it so complicated, right? And so there's parts of this, there's things that I left out. Obviously, I didn't put the word conceptual model in there. And so, but to be able to have a common framework, whatever that framework is, I think are the times when I've seen schools be most successful. And so I really think that, again, all the way from, let's just say it's a high school, right? What is the principal believe about ways that teaching and learning happens? And I think something that's also fascinating to me is, I just did an adjunct class last semester for a university, and it was an amazing experience. And I was able to actually bring some of this in, because some of it was practicing educators, or almost everybody in the class out of 10 were current practicing educators. And really to be able to give a framework for, and part of what we did was also go through Understanding by Design with Wiggins and McTighe, obviously classic text. And so I was able to share, hey, this is how my stuff interacts with the Understanding by Design, because it is Understanding by Design is truly learning by design. And so, not that I'm trying to take over their work or anything, because their work is amazing, and it was groundbreaking at the time, and it's still a very important way to think about curriculum design, I truly believe. But to be able to have, so that was a framework of common language. And so now if we take that one step deeper in terms of how people learn, my model can be a framework for educators, whether it's administrators or counselors or teachers, but then getting into students, getting to coaches, getting to athletes, even getting to parents. Again, things that I've created a whole course, a short course for parents, because, there's a whole massive, not only the homeschooling community, or sort of the micro education, the micro schools, or however you want to call it. But also for, if any parent cares about how their child's actually learning, well, hey, here's a way to do this, and here's something that could be really useful for them. So, yeah, so thinking about thinking, I think this was sort of a sideways off of metacognition there. But yeah, to go back to the lecture, so I think, again, what are, if it's a 20-minute lecture, what are 4 main points I want to hit? And every 5 minutes, okay, we're going to stop and we're going to do some reflection, whether it's individual, or there has to be some individual reflection time, because, again, Johnny in the back might have been zoning out. He might have been thinking about something else. Fair point. Again, I'm used to high schoolers, but different ages have the different attention spans. But then as well, what are
it's part of that looping thing that you're talking about. And one of the things in communication is, what did you hear me say? What do you think you heard me say? And that's that
Right.
checkpoint of, right, you knowing your audience, going forward to be able to support their learning as much as possible. So it
Right.
sounds like you do work too during the process. Do you break them into groups at times too? Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm going to share
Uh,
I'm
yeah.
going to
So
share
I
with you
think
real quickly, because Sue is texting us just to kind of keep us. She said, "Your knowledge and growth seem to come with lots of what I would call metacognition. You have done lots of deep reflection about the process, and intentionality is what you go forward with." And she says that's really a great way to teach and to connect with the world around you, because, as you said, we're all leaders and teachers in one way or the other, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So basically, yeah, really just trying to be intentional about things. And, again, it doesn't matter. I know we're talking about schools and educators, but again, people who are in any leadership
Right.
space, right? What it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a manager at your local Starbucks, or it could be, a
Right.
senior leader at a Fortune 500 company or something like that. Those are also teachers. And I think if by embracing a teaching mindset, again, is something that's really important. And again, I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying my model is perfect, but, again, giving people a common framework, a common language, and being able to really have a thought about this. And so, again, there's another interesting part, getting feedback on various things. I have done a couple, like I said earlier, a couple presentations at the main teacher conference in Southeast Asia. And so it was really cool to be able to have lots of conversations around this, and to really see sort of the light bulbs that went off with people in terms of, oh, like, yeah, this really connects to social emotional learning. It really connects to curriculum design. It really connects to instructional practices, assessment practices. And that's what I was trying to design, something that was really broad and could encompass a whole ton of different
Mm-hmm.
things. But then was, again, like any model, specific enough to where it would serve as a
Right.
foundational piece for helping people to have something to then, again, to create an initial conceptual model around learning, and then you start adding and building all
Right.
around what your initial thoughts are.
Right. Well,
So
the
I think,
basis of learning is the same for all human beings, whether it's a developmental thing where you are in the scope of things. I mean, if you have a special ed kid in the classroom, you're going to set up the stage so that they can learn from where they're at and go forward. And so all of that is still what you're sharing and showing is the same thing you would do for anybody across the board, I believe. Sue
right.
wanted to know, what would you say is your greatest skill as a leader?
I think probably like energy and passion. So really trying to, again, I can definitely tell I'm energetic and passionate about this. And so I think really doing that for my physics courses, so it's fun because I certainly enjoy talking about the nuances and everything beautiful in physics. And one of the fun parts for me is that even though students have some sort of foundation coming into, especially the high school physics classes, you can always go deeper. And so to see
Right.
the experiments that we do and the light bulbs that go off, and you're just like, oh man, like these students are really into it. And so, some of my favorite classes are the lab classes where we come up with something really cool, and they're like, what? Like, how did that just work? And you just get them, and you're like, yeah, like that's why I teach right there. And so I think that probably that would be the two biggest ones. And then I think that another one is really trying to get to the word first principles is maybe overused a little bit, but really trying to get to the level that encompasses a lot of different ideas. And so again, I think that's why I was drawn to try to create something like this model for learning, where it's like it's a really flexible thing that can be applied in a ton of
Right.
different ways. Because obviously I care about the very specific implementation of, again, in my lecture, did I ask decent questions? Did I ask questions that were helping students? All, yeah, of course, like the minutia is very important, but also, again, I think that being able to go from the very minutia all the way to the ultra abstract level, I think is something that I try to do really well. And again, try to find reading and research and the conversations, being able to go through all of those levels. I've been on a lot of airplanes in my life. And so I was actually inspired at some point to think about like 100,000 foot level, 10,000 foot, 1,000, 100, 10, and 1, and kind of break down education and sort of pyramid's the wrong word, but like break it down in sort of levels, all the way. The highest level is like, what do you believe about the way that people learn? What do you believe about what the point of school is, right? Asking all of those types of questions, and then working your way all the way down to like, hey, I'm at minute 34 of a 60-minute class. Is my class on schedule? Are we asking questions? Is, again, Johnny in the back, is he about to throw a spitball at Billy, right? Like, what is happening in this moment to moment education, or this thing that we call teaching? And I think that's one of the reasons why teaching is so hard, is that it takes 5-7 years to really start. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't start from somewhere, right? We train future educators, like, how do we manage a class so we can like move things forward, and then from there,
Right.
you start backing it up, and you're like, hey, great, like, cool, like, no, truly, like, what? And that was it. It was a really fun, again, the class that I adjuncted at a university this spring. It was curriculum theory, but the other main part of it was a massive a textbook that really forced you to grapple with what is the point of school. And so, again, this was most of them were master students, and so again, they're teaching day-to-day level. They're in their curriculum design, which is kind of like the second or third or fourth level up, depending on how you want to characterize it. But I was really forcing them to have the conversation at the very, very top of like, what is the point of school? What do you believe about like why we're doing this whole thing? And it was really cool to also be able to see them, just the way that they interacted with those questions and came to interesting conclusions on their own. And so, yeah, so I don't know where I was necessarily going with this, but it's fun to see those things happen at a lot of different levels. So
Well, and I think,
let me see.
you talking about the question why, that has to be the beginning anyway. Why do we do whatever we do in life? We better have a pretty clear idea of that to be
Yeah.
able to be effective. Definitely.
So let's see.
If I could sit in on one of your classes, Nathan, I would. I think that would be I think that'd be wonderful. I'd love to learn from you.
Yeah,
Very
be fun.
cool.
Let's
Uh,
see.
so what is your long range? Okay, so you have your doctorate already.
Yes.
And you're just going to keep doing research and symposiums, I'm betting, going to symposiums and different learning thought processes throughout the world.
Yeah.
Anything that
Yeah.
you
So
have planned for your future?
Yeah. So actually, now my family and I actually moved to the Lisbon, Portugal area. And so we're here for during the school years for a couple of years. And I'm going to continue to work on my, again, spreading the word about this model for learning. So again, like I said, I have a company called the Learning Engine. And so doing just work on the side for that, doing my, in the evenings after I have a couple of young daughters. So after they go to sleep, hanging out with my wife, and then kind of working a little bit to try to continue sharing ideas around this. And really just trying to get more thoughts and more ideas out there. And so, yeah, that's kind of the plan. We'll see after a couple of years, really, taking a couple of years at a time, and then we'll see where we go. I do enjoy, or I had a wonderful experience with the adjunct class at the university. And so that's, kind of up in the air whether or not that'll continue. Hopefully that will. Or if not, hopefully I can find some other universities out there that would be willing to have some more adjuncts. And then, really just trying to, make some things happen in terms of sharing the information.
That's wonderful. And so you were telling me that you will be where you're at for a couple of years now in Lisbon,
Yes, ma'am.
right?
Yeah. So the international teaching world is pretty interesting. And so, the first contract that you sign typically with a school, unless there's some sort of, you're taking over for somebody or something, is typically 2 years. And so, we'll be, traveling back to see friends and family in the States in the winters and summers typically, but we'll be, the contract that we have is through June of 2027. But so I'm excited to share with the school and to learn from, certainly my new colleagues. Hopefully there'll be opportunities to present some of these ideas, and then, teacher conferences or various things in this area. And then also, throughout Europe, I know that there's various conferences, just like the one we had in Southeast Asia or in Asia in general. I know that there's a European version of that. And yeah, really just trying to stay in it in terms of connecting with people on LinkedIn. So thanks to Sue for doing that. And then so really other things that I've done. So I have a 3-hour graduate level course through Fresno Pacific University. So if you look me up through there, that's available, and it goes a lot more in depth using this model for learning. And then also on, again, my website, learningengine.club, there are basically 8 short courses, have most of the same ideas, but really focused on various groups of people. And so we have educators, we have coaches, we have students, we have athletes, we have parents, we have learning and development professionals, we have business leaders, and we have lifelong learners. So if you're any one of those 8 different types, there are ways to access those courses. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about various things. And again, I love talking about this. Would love to talk with anybody about this. And so I'm so grateful to Ms. Sue and Ms. Sandy for having me on to be able to give a little bit of a chat. And but yeah, just looking forward to continuing sharing these ideas. And of course, working on it in my own family, in terms of my own, as a husband, as a father, with my children, and in my own work as an educator as well, with the classes that I'm going to be teaching in the upcoming school year, which is in about 2 weeks for me from now. So.
Okay. Well, Sue says you seem like quite an entrepreneurial guy with your workshops, conferences, and books. And I was just going to say, you are normalizing adventure for your daughters. And I think that is such a wonderful opportunity to be an international learner. And again, experiencing outside of where you were born and grown up, you grew up. It makes a difference as far as your worldview when you get to go out and see other parts of the cultures and that kind of thing. I think it's really a wonderful opportunity for them. Okay, so what I would like to say, Nathan, is we would love to have you back sometime and continue this conversation, because we just scratched the surface.
Sure.
I would love for us to go into it, as you said, deeper at a different layer. One of the things that we ask at the end of our session is, what's one thing you're going away with? And so I'm going to ask you, and Sue, you can type that in for me, and I'll go ahead and share that. Nathan, with our visit that we've had today, what's one thing you're going away with?
I think just the idea of metacognition. Again, I think my model is part of that, and the opportunity for every person who learns, right? It doesn't matter who it is. Certainly students in our classrooms, but if you are a business leader, or if you are, again, doesn't matter what we're doing, if you're an athlete, if you're a coach, if you are somebody that's working on the front lines in an organization, it's really important to take time to pause and reflect and think about what you're doing. And so again, I think that my model is a useful framework, can be a way for lots of people to have a common language. Again, it's certainly not the only one out there, but I think it's a pretty good one. And so then being able to use that as a common language to have people pause, reflect, think about what they're doing, and to think about how what they're doing fits into, are they learning efficiently? Are they learning effectively? Or are we just wasting time? Because, I don't think anybody likes to waste time. And so to be able to do that well is something that I think is really important for everybody.
I would say that my takeaway, Nathan, is that I have hope listening to you, because I know that we need to ramp up our educational system to do a better job for those who we work with. And as you said, no matter where you are, whether it's in the workplace or whether it's in an education, you are, again, taking a look and being intentional. And I think you've done this, and I think you have put a lot of thought into it. And I have hope for a future. And it's interesting because when I was going to school for early childhood education, we always talked about hands-on learning and setting up the stage for success and being developmentally appropriate in our practice as to what we're providing for kids, so that anybody can come to where they are and be able to move forward with the support of the environment and the things that the teacher sets up. And so I love it. This just sounds like, yeah, guys, this is awesome. Great work. I just love it. Sue, do you have anything you want to
Thank you.
say? What is your takeaway? It says excitement about learning. So, yeah. So we're both retired, Nathan, but you help us know that we have a lot more to learn. So thank you for sharing with us.
Yes.
If you could hang on there, we're going to go ahead and close out this session, but wait for just a few minutes because we have a couple questions after we go offline. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.